Some of the early examples of this kind of process you'll find in algae. I live close to the Miramichi Marsh here, and you see this in any stagnant pool. Spirogyra, and literally it's spiraling algae. And it's green, it's photosynthetic, and it's autotrophic. Now that means it produces its own food, not chemicals, its own food. Where this comes from is within the structure of the algae, or again, the redwood or anything in between, are chloroplasts. And chloroplasts make up Spirogyra. I mean, if you pick up Spirogyra, it's slimy again, but it's basically just strings of chloroplasts photosynthesizing, and they do a very good job of it. They're very, very small. In, say, a blade of grass or something like that, you may get 30 to 40 chloroplasts per cell. In larger plants, you could get up to 200 chloroplasts in a cell. And to show you how small they are, in 1 square millimeter, you could get 5 million of them. So, I mean, they're tiny, tiny, tiny things. And yet without them, we'd be in trouble. Big point. The thing is, these little tiny green blobs, and that's kind of what they look like, do an extremely fantastic thing. Now, before I get into botany, like a lot of people, I think, you know, you're aware of plants, maybe you have a house plant, their background, their decorations. A lot of people don't even see them as living things, and in a, you know, in an economy, they come down to being commodities. In the chloroplasts, and again, I'm not going to go into great detail, but if you go to YouTube and look some of this stuff up, you'll be amazed. The chloroplast receives a photon. Now, a photon in quantum mechanics is a quantum package of energy. Quantum meaning small. What a photon is, and we're being bombarded with them because they create light. Every light. I have a light up here going, it's creating photons. The sun, of course, is the biggest one out there. What you're dealing with is electromagnetic radiation, which is why you get a sunburn if you get too much of it. It's radiation. And the photons are just being bombarded on us all the time. And the chloroplasts in the leaf pick these up. They receive them. They enter into the chloroplasts. And then at an atomic level, I mean, this is the amazing thing. You take any kind of leaf, and within it, you're getting atomic reactions. And what happens, very simply, not really, but there's an electron transfer. Now, every atom is built of neutrons and protons in the nucleus, by the way, and then an electron ring of different configurations which make up different elements. So the photon is received by the chloroplasts, and what happens is protons are used kind of to move stuff, and then electrons become the energy levels that start to begin to circulate. And there are 2 chemical reactions, you can look this up, 2 chemical reactions that take place, I guess, every moment. I don't know how fast these things move. And then those chemical reactions are sent to the mitochondria. Now, I remember way back when in the 60s and into the early 70s, I was a medical photographer in New York, and I worked on an electron microscope with doctors. And for one doctor, we were photographing mitochondria, human mitochondria. And the one you find in a plant is virtually the same as the one you find in your cell. And I was always amazed because they look kind of like something you would find at Tim Hortons, kind of a sausage shape, but rather flat. But when you look inside the structure of the mitochondria, you see these different things. And what is looked at now is some of those different things were things outside the mitochondria. And this is where you get symbiosis even at that kind of cellular level. But it always reminded me of like looking at a factory or a town, and you'd have this over here, this structure over here, this structure over here, and this structure over here. And what's happening is these chemical reactions in the chloroplasts are being sent out to the mitochondria, which transforms them then into energy. And that energy is called sugar. It's a carbohydrate, which all sugars are. And the interesting thing is, when you look at that, given the price of gas today, if you take carbon and hydrogen and oxygen, you get a sugar. You can get monosaccharides, polysaccharides. And if you just turn them around, you get hydrocarbons, gas, oil, natural gas. It's all energy produced from the sun. And all of those hydrocarbons that we put in our gas and heat our houses and everything else come from plants that have been fossilized into coal, oil, gas, natural gas, stuff like that. And so the whole idea is those little plants that are out there doing their thing are running our cars, heating our houses. It's an amazing system and an amazing cycle. And we're part of it, and yet a lot of times we don't realize it, and we should. We should be very grateful to those little plants doing their things. Now, the interesting thing is that, like I said before, the chloroplasts and the mitochondria were what's called organelles. They're independent living things out there that somehow wind up in this symbiosis, the kind of a symbiotic relationship, I should say, and become a larger cell that's allowed then to do more than either the original cell or the cell that was ingested could do on their own. So you have this kind of cooperation, which could have been a meal or at least a war, and yet you got cooperation and you get a greater degree as a result of that. Something we should think about. Now, this is where it gets really weird. At the center of the chloroplasts is a molecule. And that molecule is based on magnesium. At the center is magnesium. And surrounding it are four nitrogen atoms. And surrounding that are four carbon atoms. That's a chloroplast. Okay, that's the molecule, and there are a lot of molecules joined together in order to form a chloroplast. In us, animals, humans, at the center of our red blood cell is an iron molecule. And surrounding it are four nitrogen. And surrounding them are four carbon. which means the only difference between me and that plant is magnesium and iron. Other than that, we're pretty much the same. And it shows you how evolution doesn't reinvent the wheel. It takes what works, may restructure it, but it keeps moving it. Now they become more complex. When you go back to Spirogyra and then compare that to a redwood tree, they don't even look like they're related. But they are. They're the same thing, the only different. That's the thing. And so the whole idea is that when you look at a leaf or the entire plant, you have to understand the mechanics that are going on within it. And I'm going to get into photosynthesis at some point, but I want you to remember this now, that when a plant, blade of grass, algae, that big redwood tree, when they do their thing, we should really be grateful, because the main product that they produce as a waste product is oxygen. And without them producing that waste product, we wouldn't be here. But we are grateful, even if we're not aware of it, because our waste product is carbon dioxide. And plants use carbon dioxide to photosynthesize. We all live in a web of circles and circles and circles. And that's what life is. If you have any questions or comments, complaints, criticisms, send them to Facebook page here, and as I see them, I'll deal with them. And I would appreciate any kind of feedback. So let me know what's going on. And there'll be more. Thank you. Have a good day. Stay inside. We're getting towards the end, but play safe. Bye.